We do all kinds of things here at Word in Your Ear.
Videocasts like this.
Podcasts like this.
Crowdcast events with famous authors.
Live quizzes.
And we can guarantee to make your next birthday one you'll never forget.
There's only one way to guarantee getting all of this, to getting it before anybody else, and that's to sign on to be a supporter on Patreon.
Full details at this address.
Word in Your Attic, a Zoom with a view.
Welcome to another edition of Word in Your Attic. We are joined by drummer, promoter, rock press wrangler, wingman to the stars, author, collector of stuff, old pal of ours, the great Glen Colson. Glen, very nice to see you.
Good morning.
Good morning, chaps.
Whereabouts are you?
I'm down in Winchelsea, which is equidistant between Rye and Hastings.
Oh, nice. Well, as in, is that on the sea? I guess it is.
It is, yeah. It's a Cinque Port. I guess we're about 2 miles from the sea.
All right, very good.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And how is life during this kind of, latest edition of lockdown?
Well, we love it. We've got a local Aldi where we get our gin, and we drink cherry juice from the local trees. We've got orchards all around us, champagne. Not allowed to call it champagne, but we've got a champagne.
British champagne? Is that what's English champagne like?
Well, it's a sparkling,
very good.
sort of white wine, isn't it? Very, very good. As good as French, really.
Nice.
The best stuff is very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
It's more expensive though. It's about 45 quid a bottle or something, you know.
Well, it sounds like it's going fairly painlessly down there.
Yeah, I mean, I drink it from a glass like this.
All right. Is that what you're drinking right now at, 9 o'clock in the morning?
Not really. No, that's water.
Fantastic.
So go on.
The music scene down here is just incredible. We've got a coffee bar in Hastings, and there's a jazz singer called Leanne Carroll that sings down in a wine bar down there every Wednesday. Do you know of her?
No, I don't think I do.
She's absolutely fantastic. She's a cross between kind of Nina Simone and Aretha Franklin, if you can imagine that.
Right.
She's quite a well-known jazzy sort of singer. She plays keyboards, and it's free. And we've also got a guy who's like a cross between Dr. John and Zoot Money called Dr. Savage, who sings with a megaphone.
Oh, very good.
Oh, right, like Whispering Paul McDowell used to do.
Yeah, but these two are incredible. I mean, I've discovered them since I've been living down the last 2 years. I mean, they're incredible. We've seen Glenn Matlock's been down here playing. I bumped into him the other day. We have Jose Feliciano came and played.
Wow.
He played at a local church in Rye. And Sergio Mendes, he played there. Richard Thompson was down here. He was playing at the Delaware in Bexhill.
I can hear a voice. Voice is off. You've got a prompter.
Yeah, that's my wife, because I forget a lot of stuff at this age. And she's 10 years younger.
It's literally like being in the theatre then. So if you forget your lines, she's got the script.
She's off out with the dog now, so I'll be a bit lost now without her.
All right. So have you been using this time to go through your souvenirs and wonder why you've got loads of stuff and wonder if you get rid of it or not?
Well, the thing is, I was going to admit that over the years, I've sold thousands and thousands of pounds worth of stuff. I sold it to mainly a couple of guys down in Blenheim Crescent called Bill and Bill. They had a shop called Plastic Passion. Have you heard of it?
No, I haven't got
No.
it.
Well, I sold all my gold discs, silver discs, platinum discs, box sets. I've got rid of practically everything. All my Viv Stanshall stuff. Yeah. So sadly for you,
Are you sad about getting rid of the Viv Stanshall stuff, or indeed any of it?
No, because it kind of kept me alive. You know, I mean, PR is a weird thing. I mean, you can have a lot of acts have records out, then there'll be a period where there's nothing. And when you're self-employed, you've got no money. And I had to flog this stuff. Right. So,
what sort of things did you sell? The Viv Stanshall stuff. What sort of stuff did you sell?
I sold
letters. You mean
paintings, letters, memorabilia. I sold that to the fan club. So no, I don't really regret. I did wake up one morning and I thought, I'm not involved. He's dead. I can't see him anymore. I want to forget about it. So I just got rid of everything.
Right.
I can remember it all, and I took photocopies of all the letters, which are in the book.
Yeah.
So no, I'm not really sad. No, not at all.
Well, we'll get onto the book in a moment, but have you got any odds and ends you can show us?
I have got loads, yeah.
What you got? Go on.
Let's
what
see.
You got?
Well, the first record I ever bought, this might not actually be it, but it was very similar, was the Hollies.
Oh, right.
And this is the best of the Hollies EPs.
Right.
I bought this in Fleet Road near Hampstead, and my sister was buying Paul Anka, and I bought this. And I've noticed now that this must be a re-release. I'd bought the record probably in about early 60s, and John Tobler has done sleeve notes, and Colin Miles did the compilation. Both good pals of mine.
Right.
And the Hollies were my favourite band.
Were they really?
Yeah. They were incredible. They had a great producer, Ron Richards, and the drummer was probably the best drummer in England.
Bobby Elliott.
He went bald very early on and used to wear a
He wear a hat. I wrote a thing about this not long ago, Glenn, that I saw the Hollies. I saw them a couple of times. I saw them once at Batley Variety Club in 1968, where he used to wear a kind of like a Spanish toreador's hat.
He did, yeah.
And the joke was that the Hollies always had very practiced patter on stage. And one of the lines of patter was, "That's our drummer. He has a head for money. It's got a slot in the top."
That's a genuinely good joke.
I'm sorry.
I never get tired of hearing that.
Yeah.
It's a very, very good gag.
No, but I mean, he was a fantastic drummer.
He was a terrific drummer.
And I remember, and Hicks, the guitarist, Conroy said he's been seen in the Henley Waitrose recently.
Right.
And I remember Julie Birchall agreeing with me on Facebook that he was the best drummer in England.
Yeah.
So there, you got good authority there.
Yeah, absolutely. So you, as is mentioned in your book, actually, was one of the things I was taken with about this is you were brought up partly in a famous pub in Hampstead. The very famous. Tell us about the historical associations of that pub.
Well, shortly after we came from Margate, I'd have been about 2. There was a very famous murder where Ruth Ellis, the last woman in England to be hung, murdered a racing driver outside the pub. He'd been drinking in the pub and she called him out and then shot and killed him. She was the last woman, as I say, to be hung. So that was very famous. And still to this day, you see things on the TV about it. And
so didn't your dad use to get you to renew the
bullet holes? Yeah. He'd send me out because the brewery used to do the pub up every 5 or 10 years, and I'd have to go out and make the bullet holes with a centre pipe because cab drivers would bring up tourists to see the holes.
To see the bullet holes. God, they'd be disappointed if they'd been, plastered over.
Well, she emptied the whole gun, 6 bullets.
All right.
And then marched up to the local police station and gave herself up. Yeah. She just had an abortion, and so it was a crime of passion, really.
Yeah. So
But you left school very early, didn't you, and got straight into the music industry? I mean, you were working. I think. What was your first job?
I was an engineer apprentice. I actually served 6 years as an apprentice. I went into night school, but I was drumming the whole time. I've been drumming since I was 10. So, and my sister was involved with the music business. So I kind of helped her and she got me in.
So your sister had various glamorous jobs, didn't she? Oh, well, later on.
The most glamorous was she worked for the guy that did Miss World.
Eric Morley.
Yeah, she was his secretary.
That was it seemed glamorous then. Yeah, but anyway, go on. Yeah. Now.
Yeah, she'd be good on this show, but she never does stuff like this. We're quite kind of quiet family. I've only ever done 3 interviews in my entire life. One with Nigel Dick, one with the Melody Makers. It's on Netflix. And this one. So I'm a little nervous, but
don't worry, we'll be gentle with you.
Yeah.
But you went from I think you were a roadie for a while with John Bonham, but then you started to work with Tony Stratton Smith at Charisma.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about him, because he's a fantastic story, I think.
Yeah.
The man who was on the Munich flight, wasn't he? The Man United flight, and was meant to be on it.
Nearly on that.
Was replaced at the last minute, and then went off and eventually worked, I think, with Epstein, and then formed his own label.
Yeah, he was the youngest sports editor on Fleet Street.
Yeah.
He was an incredible guy. My sister first worked for Shel Talmy.
Right.
And she met Strat through Shel Talmy.
Who was the guy who produced The Move? Did he have people like that?
He produced The Who, The Kinks, The Foremost, The Bachelors.
Right.
He was blind, and he had a flat in Knightsbridge where everybody hung out. Everybody used to go through that flat, and I used to pick my sister up there because I had a car, and she introduced me to a lot of guys. Kenny Pickett, who was my friend, he wrote Grandad, Painter Man. He was in a group called The Creation.
Yeah.
Ron Wood was in The Creation. So that was one. The first band I ever saw were The Action, with a singer called Reg King. He used to sing at my Saturday morning pictures in Hampstead, and we'd all say, "We want Reggie, we want," and he'd get up and he'd sing, "I've got a handful of songs to sing you."
Oh, Michael Holiday. Was that Michael Holiday?
Who sang that? It wasn't Tommy Steele, was it?
I think it was Michael Holiday, but anyway, it doesn't matter.
Anyway, we'd call for him. And then later on, he had a Tamla Motown band, The Action. And then I think they took LSD and they turned into a sort of a hippie band.
Yeah.
I don't know what became of them after that. I think they're Phil Collins' favourite band, The Action.
Right.
So then I started as an office boy working for Stratton Smith. We all worked out of his bedroom. I mean, he was an incredible man, Strat. I wouldn't know where to start talking about him. I mean, he wrote books. He actually edited the international football book.
Oh, right. Very good.
Because he was a big writer before, and then he got the bug. He went to Brazil and got the bug. I think he was in MI5 as well. So
and the early groups he signed were what? Van de Graaff Generator, Genesis, Lindisfarne?
He'd managed Paddy Klaus and Gibson,
right,
who were a jazz trio. Klaus Vorman, the bass player, and he managed them first, and a group called the Cougars.
Oh, right.
Who had something to do with Epstein, I think. Yeah.
I mean, if you had their records now, they'd be worth like 500 quid. A Cougars record, first, probably only sold about 50 copies.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw the Cougars at Dewsbury Town Hall.
Wow.
They used to wear velvet shirts. I remember it quite clearly. But you're quite right. They've completely slipped off the map, the Cougars. Yeah. They probably are worth a fortune now if you buy them. Anyway, carry on.
How old are you then?
I'm 70, would you believe?
All right. Well, I'm 72.
Okay.
So yeah, we're talking the same era, really.
Yeah.
Well,
so you were the press guy for Charisma. What did that involve at the time? You talked about at one point getting Genesis on the cover of Melody Maker by getting Peter Gabriel to dress up in some fantastic clothes or whatever. But there was no great strategy to press in those days, was there? I mean, you simply was a question of inviting a rock journalist along and filling them up with 8 pints of beer. And
yeah, that was more or less. But the thing of it was then that I wasn't really a press guy. I could barely spell. I had to get people in to write my biographies for me and things like that. But I was trained up by Terry the Pill, who was a great character. He was involved with Eric Burden, Amen Corner, and he'd known Strat from way back. He'd stolen his petty cash, and he was a real villain. He'd sold pills to the Beatles.
Hence the name. There's a clue in the title.
He used to keep them awake at night by selling them pills. And so he was a fantastic character. And he taught me the ropes. He took me round the West End, introduced me to Keith Altham and Richard Green, the Beast. He was a horrible, horrible man. He wrote for the NME. He was an alcoholic, a real beast of a man. That was his nickname, the Beast. And Eric Barrett, who was Jimi Hendrix roadie. They were the people I used to drink with at lunchtime, and they taught me the ropes, these guys. And then, of course, the guy to meet was Chris Welsh. If you knew Chris Welsh, you were in. It took me a long, long time to meet him, but I eventually met him and befriended him. And he came to my wedding many years later, became a good pal of mine.
And wrote the great column in Melody Maker, Jiving K Boots. Wasn't that him?
Yeah,
was that Chris Welsh? Yeah, the Raver.
And of course, he put me in there every week, and the acts got furious because I was getting more press than they were. But yeah, no, he was very instrumental, because if he liked your band, that was it. And the Melody Maker was the paper. You couldn't break a band through radio, and you couldn't break a band through national press. So the Melody Maker was the paper.
Yeah.
It had been a jazz paper, and then it turned into a rock paper, and he was the man. And then they had great writers like Roy Hollingworth, Mick Watts, Richard Williams, Chris Charlesworth, and Jeff Brown. And so I befriended these guys, drank with them, and you just call them up, take them to a gig, get them drunk, and they'd write a piece on the band. And that was it. That's how it worked in those days.
I love that. There was no great kind of 5-year master plan strategy worked out for the image of the group in question. It's just get them publicity, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, I wasn't really a PR. I was just a young guy, with a bit of personality. That's all you needed. I wasn't at university. I mean, a lot of these guys I met later on, they'd all come from university. They'd been social secretaries.
Yes.
They could read and write. So, but I was just doing it verbally.
Tell us a bit about your connection with Viv Stanshall then, because you started off, I think, at one stage you were a drummer for the Bonzos, weren't you, very early on?
Well, basically, he was, my sister was looking after them for Tony Stratton Smith, and he came to our pub and he heard me drumming. And because Legs Larry used to get up and drink and tap dance, they needed someone to keep time behind the band when they were doing gigs. So he employed me. I think I might have got about 50 quid a gig or something. A lot of money in those days.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah. And I travel with the road crew. I just kept time. And they were a crazy band on stage. They just jam all night and tell jokes. They were very, You must have seen them, you two.
I
didn't see
never
them back in the
never
day,
saw them
no.
live. No,
Never.
Oh.
I was sort of too young, I suppose. I don't know really.
Well, the first gig I ever did, I'd been about 19, 20. We were on a bill with Spirit, Joe Cocker, and Mott the Hoople at Leicester Top Rank. That was my first professional gig.
Leicester Top.
And I was talking to Chris Briggs the other day, and he was actually at that gig because he went to Leicester Poly or somewhere, Leicester University or somewhere, and he saw that gig. It was about a 2,000-3,000 seater.
Did they have the exploding cherry bombs and all that at that stage?
Yeah, I mean, it was terrifying because I'd been
speech captions and the thought bubbles they used to hold
yeah,
up.
I mean, I'd been stoned and I was drinking Newcastle Brown, and it was my first live gig ever. And I don't remember a thing apart from these bombs going off and long jams and the roadies going, hit harder, hit it harder, because I was a jazz drummer. And they told me to turn the sticks around the other end and bash them.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, they had tons of drummers used to come and play with them. They had Ainsley Dunbar, Keith Moon, the guy from Traffic. What was his? Jim Capaldi. Yeah, he'd come and drum some nights. So there'd be 3 drummers some nights. Mooney, Legs, and me. It was quite a trip, but I was young, and the roadies would get me stoned. So, I just passed through it all.
And you carried on working with Viv while you were at Charisma, didn't you? Later on.
Well, he became my mentor, and I looked after him for many years. I mean, for a long time, people wouldn't touch him with a barge pole because he was a total alcoholic and a Valium addict. So, I mean, he'd have periods where he'd be, okay, and then he'd go on the piss for like months on end, and no one would have anything to do with him. And I was one of the only people that would go around and see him and try and sober him up, Yeah, he was a fabulous guy. He was brilliant at everything. And he could veer from being like a priest, or he could be a complete villain from Southend, the Kersal. He used to be a bingo caller at the Kersal in Southend, and he'd steal. He'd be really vulgar when he was pissed, and he'd drink. He'd eat whelks from a stall in Cambridge Circus, and then he'd drink. What's that? Sake from Delmonico's on Old Compton Street. He'd drink a bottle of cold sake.
Oh, and whelks. Oh, God.
Yeah.
Not to be recommended.
And then he'd go to Windsor and Newton. And
what kind of digestive problems would you develop in those circumstances? My God.
He'd be sick out the taxi window occasionally just to
hurt
himself. But he'd steal from Windsor and Newton because he didn't believe that artists should pay for paints. And then we'd go and buy hexagonal glasses for him, and he'd steal frames from the shop when the guy was out the back. And then we'd go for a curry, a vindaloo, and he'd pour the writer all the way over the top of it. Yeah, no, I had terrific times with him. He loved snooker.
I'm glad you think of them as being terrific. I can remember ringing me up when I was at Mojo and around this stage once and opening a conversation by saying, "Hello, old fruit." He said, I've taken enough Valium to stun a rhinoceros.
Yeah.
She thought, oh my God. But anyway, that must have been amazing charisma. What a great label to be at. Incredible.
Well, Viv, and Viv, I mean, we had Monty Python, John Betjeman.
John Betjeman, of course.
Yeah, we had 4 albums by John Betjeman.
So did you go on the road with, because Monty Python, I remember seeing them at rock festivals in about 70, 72, around then. Did you go on the road with them and travel with them, or what was your connection
Bonzos?
With the Monty Python?
No. They never did any press. They never did any photo sessions. They never helped us once. We put about 8 albums of theirs out, and they never did a thing for us ever. It was like we never met them. We only met their lawyer. Used to come in.
You put out that genius record. Which one was it? Matching Tie and Handkerchief. I think that had three tracks. One of the tracks had a double track, one inside the other. Amazing.
Well, funny you should mention this, because I mean, all my buddies accuse me of name dropping, of course, but I once bumped into George Harrison, and he was very interested in the cutting of that album. And George Peckham, Porky Peckham, used to cut all the records, and he was a big buddy of mine. And Harrison and I were talking in this pub. He drank Mackeson, George Harrison.
Yes, I noticed that in your book. Mackeson. I haven't heard of Mackeson. Does it still make Mackeson? Surely not.
I doubt it. I think they used to give it to patients in Australia.
Yes. Pregnant ladies, people recovering from giving birth. It was like it was a Guinness substitute, wasn't it? Anyway, carry on.
Yeah.
So George Harrison.
I have to say, I talked in Brewer Street. I was in a pub. It's when I first met George. He was. We talked about that. He loved to talk about Python and cutting the record, because you put it on and you didn't know what.
Didn't know which track you get. That's right.
Yeah. So no, I remember taking Wenzel to Drury Lane where they were on, and he took colour photographs of them. Very, very rare. Yeah. And we went out on the lash afterwards, and he lost them. He lost these rolls of colour.
That's so 70s, isn't it? I mean, people would take priceless, exclusive photo shoots and then get pissed and leave them in a taxi somewhere.
I mean, they'd be worth millions now. Yeah. Monty Python, playing live. Those were the days. No, I never went on the road with them. I was on the road with Lindisfarne most of the time whilst I was working. They broke really big in 72. Mm-hmm. And they had the biggest selling album of 72, Fog on the Tyne. Do you remember that?
I do.
Certainly do.
And so I was assigned to them for like 2 years out of my life. I'd go up to Newcastle. We went to America. So we had big adventures. In fact, I've only now just got back in touch with Ray Jackson and Ray Laidlaw. And they've just bought copies of my book.
Right.
I think they were on my sister's Facebook. They weren't on mine.
Just jumping ahead in the book, just very slightly. There's a bit about Kate Bush, which interested me. That you I think, were through EMI or through David Gilmour or whatever, had gone round to see Kate Bush perform, I think, at her home. Was that right?
Yeah.
What would have been, 16 or 17 or something?
She was very young. I was working for Steve O'Rourke, the manager of the Pink Floyd, and there was a guy in the office called Ricky Hopper, who was a graduate, a bit of a junkie. And he said, "You've got to come down and see this girl of mine." And O'Rourke and I were dragged down. And her father was a doctor, Kate Bush, and he had a grand piano in his waiting room. And we went down and she played us all these songs. I mean, we were out of our depth, really. We didn't know what was going on. And we had to sit through about an hour of her singing.
And you thought it was kind of almost unlistenable, didn't you? I mean, you found it very difficult.
It was
eccentric music.
It was embarrassing. I mean,
embarrassing.
I've never liked Kate Bush. I like the look of her, but I don't like that kind of music. I'm a pub rock man.
Right.
I'm a folk rock man. I like John Prine.
Right. Because you came back and said, that'll never work. Kate Bush, that's never going to take off.
Well, I mean, I said she should be at the Festival Hall, and I only ever worked at the Holborn Anchor.
Yeah.
That was my kind of scene.
But I love the idea of her at a grand piano in a doctor's waiting room.
Yeah.
I mean, there are copies of The Lady and Horse and Hound on the other side,
Yeah. And then what happened to her was someone on Radio 2 played a record of hers, and it became a hit. And Steve O'Rourke then went out and cut a deal with EMI for her, and the rest is history, isn't it? Yeah. But there you go. Yeah, that did happen. That another name.
You worked at Stiff. when
did,
Stiff
yeah.
started in what, 76, 77. What were you
Yeah.
doing particularly there?
I did. Jake and Dave employed me to be the press officer there. It was early days. A few records had just gone out, and they had an office in Alexander Street, and it was a dirty, horrible office.
It was.
They had no cleaner to talk of. People slept there. Bands came in with what are those things called? Those little animals. Graham Parker came in with they send them down to get rabbits.
Ferrets?
Ferret. He came in with an albino ferret. Graham Parker. And then what was that other guy's? Larry Wallis. He'd come in with a snake. People would sleep there under the desk. I mean, it was a grubby, horrible, stinking office. And above were Blackhill, who managed, they had managed the Floyd, but they managed loads and loads of people. Roy Harper, Kevin Ayres.
Was this Peter Jenner and Andrew King? Was
It was Ian Dury who was managed there, wasn't he?
Ian Dury, The Clash, everybody, Billy Bragg. They managed everybody. They were upstairs, and Stiff were down. I mean, I never worked in the office. It was.
But you were on that tour, weren't you? The first, so it would have been the five of them. It would have been Larry, Wallis. It would have been Reckless Eric, Elvis, Nick Lowe, and Ian Dury and the Blockheads, I guess. You were on that tour, weren't you?
Yeah.
Can you remember any incidents from that?
Well, I remember the first night I took a bunch of press down on a coach, and it was High Wycombe Town Hall, and there were about 50 people there. And Elvis played a set of songs that no one had ever heard before. Everybody was expecting him to play the My Aim Is True. And so they didn't go down too well. And Ian Dury stole the show. And Adrian Boot was there. I took a picture of him and Spider Rowe, who was his minder, at the sound check. And it got on the cover of the NME. And that practically broke him.
Yeah.
And then I think he got worse and worse on the tour, Dury. Delusions of grandeur, you know. And he got these violent roadies in, and he wanted his own PR. I think he got BP Fallon in.
Yes.
As his PR man. I'd been doing it up to then with Cosmo, who I'd taken on. And then he got BP Fallon in, I think. So, it was an incredible tour, if you can think about that, you know. But we wanted to get them out doing stuff, but it was too early, really, for them, because none of the records had happened yet. So there was no bugger at any of the gigs that we did.
Maybe intense competition between Elvis and Ian Dury. Did they alternate as regards the headline? I think they did.
It used to, but then they decided to let Dury shut the show because they'd all join in and sing Sex and Drugs at the end. Yeah. So they just said it's easier for him to, because he'd become very, very awkward at that stage.
Yeah.
He was a very tricky customer. He used to say to me, "It's Dury, not Drury, Colson. Get it right." I mean, he was quite
fair enough.
Yeah, he was quite wicked with me because I was very loose with names and things, pronunciation and stuff. I didn't speak French, but he was a tricky customer, Dury. Did you ever interview him, you two?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
More
than once.
He could be very charming.
It was a brilliant interview because he just had loads of things to say, you know, because he just had a head full of stuff.
Yeah.
I once sat on a coach with him going up north, and all he did was he went through all the people he mentioned on reasons to be cheerful and talked about each one. And that's an interview.
That's a fantastic interview.
That's all you want.
What a great story. That's a brilliant story.
Because he just had that kind of brain, you know. He was very.
He was very friendly with Viv. Actually, they were at college together. They were at art college together.
Yes, he was. That's right. I think I saw his last ever gig in Shepherd's Bush Empire. Might have been his second last.
Right.
And I remember Derek the Draw would come on stage. He was the who eventually took on to be the singer, actually, didn't he? Come on stage with a massive spliff and just kind of administer this and then carry on singing.
Yeah. But I mean, I knew the Kilburns, when they were a pub rock band, and we used to go to all their gigs. Briggsy, Conroy, me, and a few other people. We'd go to every gig. We loved them. And we befriended them. And I was doing free PR for him for years.
Because there are parallels between Ian Dury and Viv Stanshall. They both could play kind of posh and down market as well. It's as if they had those two things going on in their heads all the time. You know what I mean? Yeah. Didn't they both? That Ian Dury's mother was quite middle class, and father was a chauffeur, wasn't he, or something like that? And
well, no, the interesting thing was that they were kind of opposites in a way. That Dury actually came from a relatively established background and pretended to be far more working class than he was, and Viv was from a really working class background. And of course, adopted that kind of fruity, posh, toppish accent. Yeah. So in a way, everyone thinks of Viv as being this kind of member of the aristocracy, and Ian as being a kind of gruff old geezer.
Well, I did try and get them together to write a musical, which you can imagine how incredible that would have been. But I don't actually think they could stand each other. They couldn't be in the same room together. I guess that must be like that with some rock stars. The competition's too great.
There's only a limited amount of oxygen in the room, isn't there? And those people, they use a lot of it, don't they?
Yeah. Well, the difficulty in my experience with rock stars is that, which I can sort of understand, is there has to be a clear pecking order. It has to be understood who is the senior party in this relationship. You can't expect two people to be kind of meant to be operating on a level, because one will always think that they're a bigger deal than the other and that they're doing the other one a favour, and the other one is attaching themselves to their coattails for a bit of publicity and an opportunity. It's very complicated.
It is.
Yeah. No, but I mean, I assume that because they were both brilliant, they would love each other because they would be on that level. But that's not the case, is it?
I don't think it is at all. That's the thing about rock stars of all kinds that I don't think people take into account enough, is that they're hugely competitive people.
Yeah.
That's how they got where they are.
They have to cut throats, don't they?
Absolutely. Yeah. They're driven people. And it never goes away from them at all. Never goes away.
I mean, the most driven rock star I've ever met is Phil Collins.
Right.
I mean, he was desperate to be famous and desperate to meet Chris Welsh. And eventually, I told him he'd have to wait. I said, it took me a year to meet Welsh, so I'm going to make you wait a year before they got together. And then, of course, Welshie was writing about him all the time and putting him on the cover and everything. But you can see ambition in these people. The only person that I thought was great that didn't really show that, trying to get rid of these people that are calling me. Graham Parker was very humble.
Yeah.
And I can never understand why he wasn't enormous, because he was.
Isn't that a bit of a clue? I've interviewed Graham Parker and I got the impression that he just wasn't as, he was just a bit self-conscious about self-promotion, actually. And whereas you need to be absolutely 1000% on it and looking for, it's like, Roger Waters once told me that to be as successful as the Pink Floyd, you had to have holes in your psychology that needed to be filled by adulation. I thought that was very honest of him to say that, actually. And it's true.
Yeah. He's such a bright guy, Graham Parker,
No, sure.
Still making great records, and I think he lives half here and half in America now.
No, well, we had him on one of these chats a few months ago. He was
I must have missed that.
He was out in New York State, wasn't he? Yeah, so he lives out in New York State.
He was wonderful.
I can never understand why he didn't make it and Elvis did. I guess I can now, but at the time, because Elvis just came up and overtook him.
And that's the tragic thing. I remember a friend of mine worked for Island Records at the time when Jake first took Elvis to play to Island Records staff.
Oh, I was there that day.
Okay. And he and my mate Steve and I were both Graham Parker fans. And he said they've got an amazing new guy at Stiff, on Stiff. We came and played for us. Called Elvis Costello. I said, what's he like? He says,
Ooh.
Yeah.
and I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And that was spoken by a man who liked Graham Parker.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's what happened there. I've never seen anybody steal somebody's thunder so much as Elvis, as the arrival of Elvis did.
And the trouble is, in America, when Parker broke, well, should have broken, he played the bottom line, and people like Armour Ertigan were in line waiting to see him. And he blew off Southside Johnny. He blew off another guy, I can't remember his name, he was on Ireland. He was kind of a soul singer. I think he was in Vinegar Joe.
Robert Palmer.
He blew Robert Palmer off. He blew everybody off. Springsteen couldn't have held a candle to him in those days. And for some reason, he just didn't do it. Big shame, really, because when Elvis went there, boom, he did it straight away.
Yeah.
You know, a terrible shame. Do you want me to show you some of my records?
Yeah, what have you got there? Go on.
Go on.
Well, I've got a couple of books that I like, but these inspired me to write mine. This is Alan Bennett.
All right, hold it up. I can't see that.
Keep on keeping on.
All right.
Right.
That's it. That's a book of his diaries. And this one, Rhinos, Winos, and Lunatics.
Is that?
Do you know this
Who's it by? Hold it up. It's the legend of
Deke Leonard.
Yes.
Deke Leonard of Man, an iceberg.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a signed copy here. This is worth about 500 quid. A signed copy. That's one of my favourite books. Do you have a copy, either of you?
No, I've not. No.
You must read it. It's brilliant.
Why is it so good?
He's a very witty guy, and it's stories of him on the road with the man band, getting arrested, drugs. It's absolutely a work of art. A work of art.
Because there was an album by Man called Rhinos, Winos, and Lunatics, wasn't there? I think there was.
Oh, maybe there is.
I think there was.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, they made quite a few records.
Oh, they did.
So I've got a little pile of records that I've. Do you want me to go through them?
Well, yeah, pick a couple out there. Go on. What have you got?
All right, I've got a record I made with Viv.
Oh, right. God,
That's Sir Henry and Dee Dee's Kraal.
Is that a Ralph Steadman illustration?
He denies making it and told his wife that I crept on his boat at night and stole the tapes. I made that. I made a record with John Arlott.
Oh,
John
what?
Arlott talks cricket.
Yes.
Fantastic.
And that's a Ralph Steadman album sleeve. I won a award.
Yes, it looks like it.
Yes.
Yes.
That won award in the industry.
Brilliant.
I did. This was one of the Barney Bubble's last album sleeves that he did for me. It never came out. It was called Breakfast Pirate Radio.
Oh, wow.
I had Rip Rig and Panic on there. Keith Allen.
Yeah.
I had lots of great guys on there. This is a record I put out. I did for Charisma called The Famous.
Oh
Charisma.
yes,
that's
a beautiful
record
with a beautiful illustration on the cover there of all the artists.
Yeah. I put the whole thing together. I did. I got the analog tapes, and I went down to a place called Chop 'em Out and turned them all into digital.
Yeah.
I went down there. Let's just get through this. I've got 10 copies of this record.
The Don Ellis Orchestra. Why have you got 10 copies? Because you like it.
Such a fantastic record.
Really?
He did the music for the French Connection. He's
They
a
marketed
jazz trumpeter.
They marketed him there. Well, they tried to market him as a rock band, didn't they? Because I think he's on one of those.
The Rock Machine Turns You On.
No,
Yes.
he's not on that one. He's on. I think he might be on Fill Your Head with Rock. He's on a later.
Yeah, he's on a compilation. Yeah.
Turning Point by the Don Ellis Orchestra. Oh, what's that?
This is the greatest single ever released.
Oh, hold it. Get it nearer into shot. I can only see the see one end of it. No,
Move it back the other way.
back. Go back a bit. Back a bit.
There we are.
Okay, I can now see something. But Ernie K. Doe's mother-in-law.
Okay.
The greatest record ever made.
Well, that's fair enough. Ernie K. Doe in later years used to run Ernie K. Doe's Lounge in New Orleans, which is a bar.
Yeah.
And every night he would come out and sing Mother-in-Law. That was his contribution to the thing. You know?
It must have come out in the mid-'60s, was it?
Probably early 60s.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, that's my favourite record.
Right.
This is a record that Pete Frame gave me when we worked together.
All right. The Swinging Medallions.
It's the Swinging Medallion. A double shot of My Baby's Love.
What's the story with that? I know something about that. And I've forgotten.
I don't really know the story. They look like the Beach Boys, don't they?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's another great record. Georgie Fame, Sweet Thing. What a great record that is.
Yeah.
This was the first record I ever plugged. The Nice, Five Bridges.
I love that cover.
In fact, Storm,
Hypnosis cover.
Storm, who designed it, showed me once that if you open it out, you can put them all together on top of each other, and it's like a bit of art.
Oh,
but no one ever knew that because you'd have to buy
about 10 copies of it.
Do it.
Yeah.
This is one of my favourite records. It's called Big Jake Calls the Waders. And it's of a guy who can mimic wader birds. And there was a guy called Chips Chipperfield that ran Ronnie Scott's. He was the maitre d'. And he took me up to Clyde to see all the birds when I was bird watching. And we met up with a guy called Alan Haven, who was a jazz organist. He used to win the pole in the Melody Maker every year. He did... he played on a lot of James Bond themes.
All right, okay.
And that's one of my favourite records. And of course, Loudon Wainwright.
Oh, God.
Nice.
I've got every record.
Is that, have you really? You got all Loudon Wainwright's records? Wow, that's a lot of records.
Huge number of records.
Well, I used to make friends. I used to call up and say, it's Glenn here from blah, blah, blah. I used to make friends with all the press officers, and I got all of his records. He eventually signed for Demon.
Yeah.
But I've actually got tickets to see him at the Delaware, and it was cancelled, and I think they put it back to next year. Yeah. But he's one of my favourites.
And he's still fantastic. He's one of the few people who just kept up that intensity and that level of creativity and imagination. He's just terrific. I think.
He's a fantastic.
He made a wonderful record about his relationship with his father not long ago, which was just marvelous.
He did.
Yeah.
This is The Greatest Sleep.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
isn't that marvelous?
I plugged that record, so you know that was a really good cover. Actually, I never thought of that.
He's a miserable bastard. I hung out with him once.
Oh, really? Was he miserable? He
spoke Spanish all day, and I don't speak a word of Spanish, so it was quite painful. I went through a Mexican meal with him, and all he eats is hummus.
Yeah,
he's a veggie.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is the rarest record I have. It's a Phil Seaman album where he talks and plays drums. And for years, I only had the record. And then one day I was walking down Portobello Road and I found this cover. It's got paint over it, grey paint. So I put the sleeve together with the record. Right. So that's a great record that I have. And these I've got to give a plug for because Andrew Lauder gave me these. Oh. He used to work for Liberty Records.
Yes.
They're a set of the many sides of rock and roll, 3 volumes.
Oh,
I've got 3 volumes of it.
And they've those for a long time.
And they're the best. We used to go around there.
Oh, terrific.
And and I've got a lovely Woody Guthrie record that comes in some kind of weird cardboard package. I think it's got a book in there as well.
Fantastic.
And now I'm going to tell you the best 2 records ever made.
Go on.
Here we go. I'm going to have a little glass of water. I'm desperate to get all these plugs in, you see.
No, fine.
Now, this I bought for £7. It's the band's
It's the band?
2 records.
All right.
Music from Big Pink and the band.
Yeah.
Now, you can't tell me 2 better records than that.
No.
They're fantastic. That's very convenient. You've got them both in one album. So it's
Was
a choice for the greatest record ever made. In fact, it's 2.
Yeah. Well, they were 2 great records. And this is the best record ever made.
Oh, okay.
Blonde on Blonde.
Fair enough.
Well, yeah, we wouldn't disagree.
Yeah. I knew you wouldn't. I'd argue with you if you did.
No, we don't disagree with anybody's nomination of the greatest record.
There's no wrong answer.
Like your book, Glenn. What's behind your book? You've written and self-published.
Yeah.
Your memoir.
Yeah. What happened was that I was talking to a few publishers, and they were messing me around, keeping me waiting, and I can't spell, and they had early versions of the book. So I had a tickle with Rough Trade, Jeff Travis.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I had a shot coming out, and then they did something and it didn't work out. Anyway, I talked to a couple of people, Adrian Boot and Richard McPhail, and I talked to a printer, and he said to me that you'll never earn as much money as if you do it yourself. Yeah. He said you can earn 10 quid a book, if you do it yourself. And he said I'll print them for you. He's out down in Ashford, and they deliver the books to me. And he said that we do books for Marillion and Wishbone Ash. He said everybody in Wishbone Ash has written a book. The drummer, the player, the guitar.
You're kidding.
He said
all 4 of them for the memoir. That's fantastic. Yeah. I've been fascinated to know which one sold the most.
Well, so would I.
Did Steve Upton do better than Ted Turner?
Yeah. At least I know their names. I can't even remember their names.
Laurie Wisefield, Andy Powell.
Andy Powell, Ted Turner, Martin Turner, and Steve Upton. I remember them vividly.
Okay. Well, look, so basically he can print up 50, 100 books. He said, don't do too many. Don't get ambitious. Yeah. He said, because they'll just rot in your garage. And so I got some label printers. I got some Jiffy bags, and I got some bubble wrap, and I got a website. I mean, I got all this together. I mean, it's quite difficult. Design a website, GoDaddy. And so I've got my own website. I joined PayPal. And so all people have to do is go to glencolson.com.
We'll plug it. Yeah.
Send me an email, and I send them an invoice, and they can have my book. I've had pretty good. All I've sold to is people on Facebook.
Right.
I've got 150 people on Facebook.
Well, there's quite a few people on Facebook. It's easier to sell on Facebook than it is at a bookshop at the moment, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think people go in bookshops. I think it's like America. No one's got a passport in America, have they? So I think only about 5% of people ever go in a bookshop.
You may be right about that.
Well, clearly that's the right way to try and sell books right now, anyway.
So there it is. Yeah. And what's your they've just got to go and look at glencolson.com.
Yeah.
And they'll find further details of it.
Yeah.
Glenn, it's been lovely talking
to you. Lovely to talk to you after all this time.
Yeah.
And see your extraordinary records and hear your extraordinary stories.
We've not had a bird call imitators album on before. It's a first, isn't it, Dave? I think
it is.
We never got to the bottom of you trying to kill me, did we?
Oh, did I try to kill you?
No,
what happened? Let me tell you what happened. I don't know if it's over now, but I'll tell you anyway. There was a game of football between Stiff and Madness. And if Stiff won, Madness would have to sign with them. And for some reason, Mark was playing for Madness, and I was playing for Stiff, and I was coming down the
Are
wing.
you sure? Me? I don't
Mark,
remember this at
Mark
all.
Allen can't play football.
I can't play football.
Yeah,
Couldn't have been me.
literally cannot.
I swear it was you. And I was running down the wing, and you took me out. I went up in the
Yeah,
air.
that's even less likely.
You ran into me. You weren't really playing football. You just ran into me like a schoolboy.
It's not Mark
I
Allen.
cannot. This is
No,
serious.
it's
But I
opposite.
remember. If this had happened, I would remember.
It was opposite the brewery in Chiswick. There's a little bit of land there, a little park.
Listen, if Mark Allen had ever played football,
You'd
would
know
have been
about
it would have been on the front pages of national newspapers.
I would have written,
People would know-
written tons.
honestly,
I've been dining out on it.
I'm
It's
telling
another
you,
Mark. I wonder who it is. I'd love to know who it was.
it's another
Mark
Mark.
Lamar, probably.
So did you know Madness though?
Not really, no. No, I mean,
No,
I
not
did,
before they signed to Stiff, probably.
I'm
No.
not starting up for the Sand Stiff, no. I did odd bits of writing about Stiff. I
You
wrote
knew
about
him, well, they were on two-tone, weren't they, before
Yeah.
on Stiff, I suppose. You might have known through Huey.
No, it
Willie or
wasn't
something
me.
like that. But no, you're thinking of a
I'm-
different Mark.
I'm dying to know who it was.
I could have sworn it was you. Even Paul Conroy said it was you.
Oh, well, you know,
No,
no.
All right, I'll let you off the hook. I've been bad
not guilty.
for years at party dinners telling that story. But so okay,
Carry on telling it. Doesn't bother me. That's
I
great.
promise I'll shut up about it now.
No, it's good. All right, Glenn. Well, lovely to talk to you.
Nice
Fantastic.
to
Yeah,
talk
lovely.
to you.
Thanks.
Word in Your Attic, a Zoom with a View.